Well, it was a day of howling winds and some really massive snow squalls in parts of upstate New York and into Pennsylvania. Going to go back and look at a radar about this. A new system is heading out of the Gulf states and moving northeastward. So it looks like we're going to get rain and there will be some ice and snow well to the north in upstate New York and into interior northern New England. And we'll get into that as well. Plus, we've got rain and snow and some heavy snow risks out in the Northwest for the first time in, I think, this whole winter. So things are happening. Maybe not the way you want them to, but things are happening, and we're happening here on tonight's Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast, which, of course, you can support simply by doing your Amazon shopping by using our referral link that's pinned to the top of the chat board or as on the descriptor to this podcast. Just use the link to take you to Amazon, get your stuff. Amazon sends us a little bit of coin for sending you there. It doesn't come out of your pocket, it comes out of theirs. And, well, it's just a very easy, simple way that doesn't cost you a dime to lend support to those of us here who are starving on a daily basis on the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast. So, I got a number of people that I know that sent me messages today about the snow squalls that occurred in upstate New York today, including our Chuck Cardillo, who's on the who's I think he's on the chat board somewhere. Yeah, there he is. Uh, they were some of the pictures I saw, Joe, were mind blowing. I mean, literally zero visibility and howling winds.
You know, the squally conditions that they see up near the Great Lakes is something where it goes hour after hour after hour. I mean, what we're talking about here, it doesn't last much longer than, let's say, 15 or 20 minutes, generally speaking. And we've even had a few of those drop into the tri-state metropolitan area and make headlines. But as far as snow locally was concerned, Joe, I think we had a couple of spits. That was about it. I mean, I saw a few snowflakes in the air about mid-afternoon today, but it was no big deal here.
Right.
But obviously, it was a big deal if you were well north and west of where I am.
Well, I got I got the loop on from UCAR on there. It's a 12-hour loop, and the it'll go back to the beginning momentarily. But I mean, this looked like almost looks like a line of thunderstorms the way it evolved from this. Here we go. So we're starting from earlier this morning, and this doesn't look anything extraordinary, but you're going to see a line that's going to form from from north of Binghamton. There you go, right from north of Binghamton into northern Pennsylvania. It kind of held together till it got through the Catskills, and then it basically fell apart after that. But it was really impressive from what people were describing as it moved on through. I just thought I'd share that with everybody.
And that cold front, the leading edge of that much chillier air was ramming into, I'm not exactly going to say a balmy air mass, but I mean, like here locally, Joe, in Putnam Valley, we got up to 48. New York City, I think, got into the low 50s today.
Yeah.
It's about as mild a day as we've had around here in many, many moons. So you have that sharp front interacting with that kind of air mass, and yeah, it wouldn't be too surprising to see lines of heavy precipitation. And in this case, it was squally, snow squall conditions.
It
But
was.
as you also pointed out, as they headed south and east, the air was also very dry locally. So once again, it was a case of the snow running into a wall of dry air, and the only thing that was able to make it as far down as the ground were just a few scattered flakes. Nothing to compare with what they saw up across the central and northern sections of the Empire State today.
Yeah. The boilerplate that sits over much of eastern Pennsylvania to southern New England these days, when as far as snow is concerned. You had a howling wind also today.
Yeah, they had wind advisories posted, but I mean, it was the kind of wind where when I took the dog out this morning, it was not just that you could feel it, but you could hear it. It was howling indeed. It was really, really blowing. It was blowing for much of the day today, and even right now, while it's not as significant or prolific as it was several hours ago, it's still fairly busy. The wind is out there right now.
All right. Welcome tonight to everybody on the chat board. Welcome to those of you who are not on the chat board but watching in the background on tonight's Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast. And we are on Sunday through Thursday at 7:35 p.m., the occasional Friday and Saturday when there's a storm around. And of course, you won't miss us if you make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel and turn your notifications on. And also, if you like tonight's show, hit the like button because if we make it to 100, Joe gets to tinkle his bell over there. So,
Yes.
yeah. Um, okay, so we've got the next system coming Friday, which if it produces maybe a quarter of an inch, it will spoil the hard work of getting the driest January on record, at least for New York City anyway. I don't know about the other locations, but at least for New York City, it will be the driest January on record. And I think we're going to get at least a quarter of an inch of rain on Friday to spoil that.
Yeah, it's too bad. If only January was a month that had 30 days in it, then we'd do it. But unfortunately, it's going to last one more day, Friday, and yeah, the chances of us breaking the all-time driest January on record is going to go right by the door. It's not going to happen.
All right, we still have some wind advisories up for a few counties in northern New Jersey, Long Island, New York City, the Valley Hudson, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, much of upstate New York. Also, we still have winter storm warnings up in northern New York, up I-81 north of Syracuse, advisories to the south of that, as some lake effect nonsense is continuing. Also, for a few counties in northwest PA. Flood watches are now up for the mountains of West Virginia, flood watches from western Kentucky southwestward through Arkansas and into southeast Oklahoma and northeast Texas. In the west, we have winter storm watches up for western Wyoming, western Montana, central and northern Idaho, and also for the Cascades in Washington and Oregon as the Pacific is waking up. And we got what looks like a nice stream of moisture that'll be coming in with a series of storm systems and weather fronts over the next several days. Oh, have to point this out. They still have it. Yes, Joe. Winter storm watches are up for the higher peaks on the Big Island of Hawaii.
And yeah, that's. I mean, I'm not going to say that's rare or even unusual. I mean, take for example the fact that Mauna Kea and Mauna Loa, each the high peaks are about 13,000 feet above sea level, and it doesn't matter that you're, at a very low latitude in the tropics, like 18 degrees north latitude, 18 degrees north of the equator, at 13,000 feet. When the situation comes and the situation is right during the wintertime, yes, even down there at that altitude, you can get snow, and that's exactly what as you alluded to, is what they're expecting in the coming days ahead.
And they're getting the forecast is for 4 to 8 inches, by the way. Now, don't want to leave out our friends in Alaska because we have, you know, all sorts of weird colors here. I'm trying to get to, they don't have they don't have the boxes that the Weather Service offices have here on their home pages. They've got this big amorphous map. I'm just gonna pick a spot here. Blizzard warnings cover much of southern Alaska. Uh, Tal- Talkeetna Airport at this time, which is in the southern part of Alaska, to west of Anchorage, is 3 above 0. And let's see what they're doing here. So they've got blizzard conditions expected. Strong wind gusts will transport recently falling snow onto roadways and reduce visibilities. Wind chills as low as 40 degrees below 0. So it's mostly for blowing snow and not for any additional snowfall. So, but nonetheless, a blizzard is a blizzard, and they're, just blowing away over there in Alaska. We don't like to leave out the big state that Alaska is. But a little bit busy here on the watches and warnings map. And as we check out the loop tonight, the last upper trough is swinging across upstate New York. It should just get out of the way soon. The low pressure area that is in the Gulf of Maine is moving eastward, so I suspect that we will see winds easing slowly but surely during the overnight. And we've got moisture building. You can see the rotation back in New Mexico. This is the upper low that's been sitting in the southwest the last couple of days. Finally, is going to get kicked out eastward, and it is pulling up some Gulf moisture into Texas and Oklahoma, setting up for maybe a little bit of severe weather, which we'll get to momentarily. But Joe, that's the next system that's the system coming up for Friday. I mean, it looks to me like there probably will be, this looks like maybe like I-90 and northward as far as snow is concerned, and maybe a narrow zone just south of I-90 that maybe gets a mix or some ice or, one of those combinations. But for the vast majority further south, from northern Virginia to southern New England, this is going to be a rain event.
Well, I mentioned to Renata, our kids are teachers, and I said, they may have a delay on Friday morning, and that kind of took her by surprise. But even though the temperatures are going to be warm enough for the majority of the precip to be in the form of rain, interior valleys in the lower Hudson Valley could hold on to just enough cold air at the start if it comes in early enough, maybe at or just before daybreak, for the precip to be in the form of sleet and ice. It won't last out, the whole day, and it won't last very long, but maybe just enough to make for a slick and slippery commute Friday morning. Now we'll see if that still is the case tomorrow, whether or not, because if it takes longer to get in, it may have warmed up just enough so that it'll be just a cold rain. But in any case, if you're going to be out and about on Friday in the morning, be advised that there maybe some problematic conditions for you in terms of maybe a little sleet or ice to deal with. But again, much of Friday looks to be wet and rainy. That'll be out of here by later Friday night, and then that sets the stage for what looks to be basically a fair weekend. Saturday certainly bright with more sun than clouds, then more clouds and sun coming in on Sunday, and then another disturbance may be arriving to bring us more precipitation, either wet snow or maybe wet snow mixed with or snow changing to rain. That would be for later Sunday into Sunday night.
I take a look at this Pacific Loop. This is actually quite busy, but you can see a lot of moisture here, and there's a wrapped up cyclone of some sort trying to gain. So that's 40 north. So it looks like around 40 north, and I can't see. I don't. There's no numbers on these the latitude and longitude lines, and I can't see where. I can't gain perspective. Hawaii is to the south of this, but this upper low, this must be spinning north of Hawaii. But it's the driving force. Look at all this moisture getting pulled up from the subtropical Pacific into this stream that's destined to go into the Pacific Northwest. And there's a lot of others. There's another big system west of the Aleutians out here that's pushing eastward. So very, very impressive Pacific, and a busy Pacific at that. Now, by contrast, let's see if I can pull up. And I guess we have to look at it via the full disk on the Atlantic. Just to do something different here. Take a look by contrast at the Atlantic. I mean, it's pretty dead. There's a big storm here way up in between Labrador and Greenland. And you got, the thing that's moving off the New England coast there. And then there's something else further east. But the rest of the Atlantic is just dead. There's hardly any cloud cover anywhere.
Really wide open, so to speak. And you pointed out yesterday or the day before yesterday how the upper level winds almost takes you on a straight line from the U.S. East Coast to Europe,
Yeah,
and
it was a ruler. Now it's going to change a little bit, but there's no buckling of any kind in the Atlantic. This is the last couple of years it's been like this as far as the Atlantic is concerned.
it's interesting. It really, and the dichotomy, the difference between the Atlantic and the Pacific. I mean, the Pacific looks so active with all of those whirls and swirls, and the Atlantic, as you just pointed out, Joe, looks well practically dead, save for maybe the North Atlantic up and around. I know they just had a very significant storm hit Europe in the last day or so, but
Right. This one started with an H. It was the follow-up to Ewan. I guess there were two other ones between that. But yeah, there was apparently because I saw it tonight on the new CBS Evening News that this storm has brought flooding to a lot of France and and Spain.
right in Spain, if you remember, about a month or two ago, had cataclysmic flooding. The last thing they really would like to see in Spain is more water. In fact, they seem to be hogging all the water that should have fallen in California for this particular winter season so far.
Correct. And we all know that the rain in Spain stays mainly on the
Stay on the
plain.
plane. Yes.
However, the aunts in France stay mainly on the plants. Where is that from?
I don't know.
Is that from the Flintstones?
Uh, Somehow I remember the Flintstones, Fred saying the Rashkin fraction is Manskin and the Planskin, but
Okay.
I
But
don't remember.
I also seem to recall the aunts in France stay mainly on the plants. I don't know. I guess my memory's not what it used to be.
I Love
Um,
Lucy.
no, it wasn't definitely not I Love Lucy. Um, the lake effect stuff is going on. You can see the bands here, particularly in north central New York around Watertown and north of Pulaski. Looks like there's some snow in and south of Syracuse down to Binghamton, and then Chuck Cardillo moving in your direction here if they hold together. Out in the south to the west and south in Texas, a buildup of some showers and even a few thunderstorms popping up west of Dallas Fort Worth. Also seeing some bands of heavy rain in central Arkansas, southern Kansas. A little bit of moisture in New Mexico. Nothing much else in the west, at least for the time being. Storm Prediction Center, marginal risk in central Texas tonight. Well, and they had a general thunderstorm risk here, Joe, over Connecticut and Massachusetts. Um, that's a little strange.
Well, maybe the Cape value was enough to support it.
Yeah, maybe. But that's just odd. I didn't expect to see that. But there's nothing on the radar that's anywhere close by. But well, defer to SPC. They know better than I do. And tomorrow, we've got a slight risk in southeast Texas, much of Louisiana. Marginal risk pushes up into Arkansas and western Mississippi. There's a 2 to 5% tornado risk in this zone. Day three, a small area of marginal risk a little further east in the Florida Panhandle, southern Alabama, southwest Georgia, and a general thunderstorm risk northeastward from there into eastern North Carolina. And as far as precip over the next 7 days, all of this is from this coming weekend. So we're looking at a half to 3/4 of an inch, skimming Boston, New York City, and points south. Not too much going on in the southeast specifically, a quarter of an inch or less. The higher amounts will be from northeast Texas through Arkansas and a narrow band in the Ohio Valley, southern Illinois, Kentucky, southernmost Indiana, where you and just touching southern Ohio, where you see a band of an inch and a half, and then there's a little stripe of 2.5 inches crossing Arkansas. And then look at the west. I mean, it went from nothing for how long? Or next to nothing. Now we've got areas of 10 to 15 inches of liquid being indicated for the Sierra Nevadas and parts of Northern California, and then up through the Cascades, a little bit less, but every bit of, say, 3 to 6 or 3 to 7 inches up through the Cascades. and the snow amounts there are substantial. There's some 60 and 70-inch prints here to the mountains to the east of Seattle, and also some big amounts in the northern Rockies in Idaho and on up into western Wyoming. The West is the place to be for snow lovers. And also in Arizona, it's like Flagstaff might get into some of this. Northwestern New Mexico and into Colorado, seeing some snow being indicated to the south and east of Denver on the order of 6 to 12 there. So, again, it's in the west. And then when we scramble over into the east, now some of this is left over from tonight, but there'll be some additional snows uh, with the system on Friday. So, we're looking at half a dozen to a dozen inches in a rather large sweep across upstate New York, and particularly heavy in the Adirondacks, and going up, extending east into western and southern Maine. So New England gets it, upstate New York gets it, everybody else, they don't get it.
By the way, what do you think the groundhog is going to say on Friday on Sunday morning?
What do you think it's going to say?
I think it's going to. Was it you
Isn't
or
it obvious what it's going to say?
was it? What are they going to say? Did he say he's going to
That
see his
that
shadow?
winter's over. You can't tell people that went through with the kind of January cold that they went through in the everything is east, obviously everything revolves around the Northeast anyway. The way they do this. I mean, you got this stupid rodent that's going to say something that somehow generally applies to everybody from coast to coast. Winter's just getting started in the West. So what sense does that make? But
Well,
my guess is that they're going to have that stupid rodent say that he didn't see his shadow and that winter's over.
I heard, and I think it was on Stephen Colbert's show the other night, that the people at PETA want to do away with the groundhog altogether, and instead of taking out a
Well,
groundhog.
I got a great recipe if they want. I'll send it to them. People need to find better things to do with their time um, on both ends of the spectrum. Anyway, before I get
Well,
myself into trouble.
no, well, this is the absolute truth. Now, PETA petitioned uh, the state of Pennsylvania to replace Puxatawny Phil with a weather reveal vegan cake on
Oh,
ground.
good God, stop. Stop. This is just, you know, it's so,
They
go
sent
on,
a
Joe. I'm sorry, go on.
the animal rights organization PETA sent a letter to the Puxatawny Groundhog Club offering to provide the vegan treat, which would mimic that of a gender reveal for a baby for the annual February 2nd ceremony in Gobbler's Knob, if they agree to retire the beloved rodent and his family to a reputable sanctuary. And they argued in a letter that they sent on January 21st to Tom Dunkel, who is the president of the Pennsylvania-based Puxatawny Club, that the 138-year-old tradition should be scrapped, noting that Phil's weather duties are, quote, you ready for this, Joe?
Go
No
ahead.
piece, no piece of cake for him.
Oh,
So there you go.
uh, you know, really, a, a vegan cake. I'm just going to let that roll. Um, anyhow, nothing much with respect to on the models here as far as tomorrow's concerned. Of course, the gradient's going to um, weaken. I'm trying to come up with the word weaken and relax. So the winds should die off. It's going to take a little while during the overnight, but they'll die off during the day tomorrow. And then here comes the low, the next low. Of course, the high goes out off the mid-Atlantic coast. The low pushes up into no cold air. So it's rain. Joe's correct. There might be some freezing rain maybe at the start. in northern Pennsylvania, maybe northwest New Jersey and the Hudson Valley, the Catskills, as you said, in the valley. Sometimes cold air gets trapped. You start to see snow break out during Friday afternoon in upstate New York and Vermont and New Hampshire, and then the low kind of translates eastward off the coast of Cape Cod of Massachusetts, south passing south of Nova Scotia and goodbye. That leaves the east with what looks like a nice weekend with temperatures probably where they should be for this time of year. And here in the west, and then in the west, you see this big storm coming in with heavy snow and heavy rain spreading inland as we go through the weekend. And there'll be a couple of other surges for a little while early next week. And then, as far as next week is concerned, there is probably going to be something around, next Wednesday into Thursday. There's you know, there's not a whole lot here to work with as far as cold air is concerned. So I'm going to just pass on what the models are suggesting. But my guess is that if it's going to be snow, it'll be more inland than anywhere else, and rain, for the coastal areas and points south. And then that low goes out, and then it turns a little colder behind that. Then you got another low that comes and goes to the Great Lakes now, with a nice strong southwest flow around the 9th and 10th, and then a front will go by, and who knows what happens after that. But I mean, the upper air pattern, folks, is just really not supportive for much to happen. The only way anything happens is if you got something running around right around the time that you get one of these shots of cold air. It has to time out perfectly. And from what I'm seeing here at the moment, it looks fairly hopeless for snow lovers, at least for the next couple of weeks.
Well,
Hopeless, Joe. Hopeless.
well, it's true. I'm sorry to say. CPC, Climate Prediction Center, in fact, on the 8 to 14-day outlook, has the entire eastern United States immersed in above normal probabilities for warmer than normal temperatures. So, what can I tell you?
Yeah. Uh, so there you go. Who has Briller Jeopardy tonight? I do, right?
I think you do. Yes.
Yeah, so let's take a look and see what that has to say. Thanks, Scott Briller, for sending this. Okay, we're still doing average monthly snowfall for January for these cities. Okay, are you ready? Everybody on the
I'm all
chat
set.
board ready?
I'm all set.
All set. We've got 16 likes to get to 100 while we're doing this. If you like the show, hit the like button to get us to 100. Minneapolis, Joe, Minneapolis
This is the average snow now for
for the
January.
month of January. Correct.
Uh, how about 14 inches?
It's a little on the high side. A little on the high side. Gary Crosby, 8 inches is a little on the low side. Adam Lowe and Jason Fox, you're close at 12. Rich Rothmansky, you're close at 10. Vincent Croce and Patrick Darcy at 11. 11. Okay. 11 inches, Joe. How about Ganashville?
2.
Ring the bell for yourself.
Thank you.
Rayo nails it on the nose.
Yes.
And you can also ring the bell because we now have 101 likes.
I want to make sure my counter is, yes, there it is, 101.
What'd you think? I made it up?
101. A silly millimeter longer.
Yes.
101.
Well, what'd you
Yes.
think? I made that up? That it was 101? Did you had to
No, but I was
verify
in the
it on
midst.
your counter?
No, I was just in the midst of refreshing.
Oh, okay. I'll read
So
it.
there you go. I don't know why my counter doesn't. It sometimes it'll refresh, but more often than not it doesn't, and it's rather annoying when I have to. The funny thing is, the thumbs up counter never refreshes, but how many people are watching now? According to what I see here, 133 people are watching. So thank
Okay.
you to
Philadelphia.
Philadelphia. Well, I think New York City had 9, so Philly, I'll say 6.
So did Patrick BFD, um, but and a few others. Patrick Darcy, Adam Lowe, and I think that's it. Seven. Oh, Mike Waterhouse Bonsai, seven. Frank Scalera, seven. Seven, Joe, seven. And thank you, Quiet John, for another generous super chat hit. Most appreciated. Thank you very much. He says to ring your bell, Joe. Ring your bell.
I'll ring it. I always ring it for Quiet John.
Yes, very generous of you. Thank you, Quiet John. Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh, I'll say 8.
That's a little too low. That's a little too low for Pittsburgh. Um, Vincent Croce is on the doorstep at 12. And Helen Bertona gets it, and so does Mark D42. 13, Joe. 13. Ardillo and Rothmansky follow it up, and Mr. Dreams, 13. Finally, Oregon, Portland.
Oh, they can't have all that much. Um, I'll be generous and say 4.
Oh, God, no, no. Adam Lowe, first on the board with this one, and Mr. Darcy.
Un,
One.
un, yes.
Un.
I said I thought
Un.
I'd be. I said I thought I'd be generous. I thought maybe I might, take into account recent snowfalls there. But yeah, it's obvious that they don't get very much in Portland and
Right.
Seattle as well.
And the bonus tonight is Mount Washington.
Oh, oh, oh dear. What possibly could they be? They're at 60. They're what? 6,300 feet above sea level. What
Yes.
possibly could they be getting? Um. Oh God. Christopedia, I don't think 120. I don't think. I don't know. I'll say something silly. I'll say 38.
That's actually not a bad guess. It's fairly close. Rich Rothmansky nailed it with 44. 44 from Mr. Rothmansky. So there you go. They know their climate. And Lakeville
458
458
SCM.
SCM.
Yeah.
Thank you for hitting the tip jar. You're new to this channel. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Welcome to the
Thank you.
chat board, too. Lakeville 458 SCM. I'm trying to decipher that puzzle.
So
That,
tomorrow night we'll have a better idea as to who's going to get what for Friday morning and whether or not there will be possible early delays because of ice or sleet. But again, the majority of what's going to fall on Friday is going to be in the form of rain. And then after that, it gets out of here and it sets us up for what looks to be a fairly decent weekend, especially Saturday, although it'll be brisk and cold. And Sunday, well, we'll see. Maybe late in the day, more precipitation. Again, more likely rain than snow. But again, tomorrow night, we'll have a whole different picture, a better picture of what we can expect as we close out this week and actually close out the month.
yep. Sunday looks like a good day, too. So but the weekend's good. 58 here at my house. I think Atlanta got to 69 today. And we've got, it's going to be like upper 60s to mid 70s for the next 7 days. Down in Atlanta, here it'll be, mostly low and mid 60s, but definitely welcome. My low this morning was 24, and it just felt so good, considering I've been in the low teens and single digits, what seemed like an endless stretch. But now we've got and the daytime temperatures have been terrible. They're having a real tough time getting above freezing. But we finally broke through that a couple of days ago, and now it's onward and upward, and I'm looking forward to it. So there you go. All right. Thank you to Quiet John and Lakeville 458 SCM for hitting the tip jar tonight. Thank you for the 112 likes. And Joe and I will be back tomorrow night at 7:35 p.m.
If we don't blow away,
That's right. Well, if you don't blow away, because it's not windy here. All right, folks, have a great night. We'll see you. Yes, the hostas are blooming. The calendar on bloom again. We'll see you tomorrow. Night, night.
Good night, folks.